Hello, and thank you everybody for tuning in to the TTE's newest production, Turning for Home. I'm your host, Andrew Calvano, and every week what we're going to be doing is inviting special guest handicappers and other people who have a great influence on the sport of horse racing for education of the sport and, of course, to pick some winners. Without further ado, it is an honor to welcome back Bobby Shoemaker, a familiar face who we've done so much work with. Bob, a pleasure to have you back.
Hey, glad to be here, Andrew. Appreciate you giving me a call earlier this week, asking me to be on the show.
Without a doubt, Bobby, nobody else. Got to get on the call and cap some horses with you. So, of course, Bob, we have the biggest 3 days on the New York racing circuit. We're leading up to Belmont Stakes. Saturday, a tremendous card with full of graded stakes races, 6 grade ones, and, of course, capped by the Belmont Stakes to end the Triple Crown racing for the season. So we're going to be going over 4 stakes races for this Saturday. That's June 10th. So we're going to be going over the 7th race, which is the Woody Stevens, the 9th race, the Met Mile, the 10th race, the Manhattan, and the 11th race, the Belmont Stakes. So, Bob, without further ado, let's break right into it. And let's get started here. We'll start off with race 7, the Woody Stevens, the 7 Furlongs affair for $500,000 for 3-year-olds on the dirt. Bob, we have the favorite of this race, number 8, American Anthem, shipping in for Bob Baffert. Obviously what Bob Baffert has done, bringing horses over, as we've seen the last few years with American Pharoah and Arrogate, obviously what he does is something very special. But what do you make of this one shipping in here today?
Andrew, I've really had high hopes for American Anthem for quite some time. I just don't think he's ever lived up to his potential. And with that being said, we're talking about a horse that's 5-2, shipping across the country, and obviously Bob Baffert put the demons to rest last year as far as shipping is concerned when he took a horse named Arrogate to Saratoga, and the rest is history. Do I think he's the horse to beat? Maybe so, but I'm certainly going to try to beat him here, and I do believe that the horse is vulnerable, and I think this horse's best asset is getting to the lead early. And I know Timeform US, Andrew, has this as being a slow pace. I don't could be quite hot. And I think American Anthem's best chance is to be on that lead with a couple other horses.
And I agree with you, Bob. When I was looking at this race, definitely wanted something that was coming from more off the pace. So let's break into the pace. As we mentioned, I see a couple horses, Bob, and I really think where this race is going to make or break it, for that sense, is with number 3, Recruiting Ready, who is coming off that big Chickling performance over on Preakness Day.
Yeah, I agree, and I think this horse really has a chance to set the tone. And I know riders in New York, Andrew, have a tendency of not being aggressive from the bell sometimes, and if they're not aggressive from the bell on this day, and Recruiting Ready is able to set the lead and it be a soft pace, if you will, this horse may go all the way. I was against him May 20th at Pimlico. He certainly proved me wrong that day. He's going to have to prove me wrong again. I just don't think this horse is classy enough to get the job done. But if they let this horse walk the dog early, he could pay a decent price.
And I think that's what a lot of people are saying as well. Obviously, this year with races at Laurel Park, Oaklawn Park, and up until Pimlico really is when he saw the most competition, I guess you can make the argument for. But I think, like I said, with Recruiting Ready, I also think along with American Anthem, there's going to be some other horses that are going to want the front end. I'm just going to rattle off a few horses here as well as those two. I think the 2, Classic Rock, a fast shipper coming in from Gulfstream Park, is also going to have a dictation on the pace, as well as Giuseppe the Great coming off that maiden win for Nick Zito. Didn't really show early speed last time out, rallied from off the pace to graduate. But if you look 2 back, showed some early speed, and I think from the rail, Nick Zito, especially facing winners for the first time, is going to want to send.
And Andrew, what about Blessed Halo, the 5 horse? I understand last time out was on a sloppy racetrack going 7 furlongs. This horse wanted the lead going 6th back in April 5th. May not necessarily be as fast as the others that you mentioned, but I think another horse that could be on or near the lead pressing that pace.
Of course, and obviously with David Canizzo and Joel Rosario, you always got to watch out for that team as they click near 25% on the New York circuit. So, Bob, let's get right into it. Who's your top pick for the Woody Stevens?
Andrew, obviously I'm afraid of the 3, Recruiting Ready, because of the pace scenario. Certainly the fastest horse in the race, but I don't think he's good enough, as I mentioned. I'm going to go with a long shot here, second off the layoff, and that's the 4 horse, Gold for the King. Charlton Baker with Jose Ortiz aboard. I really love this horse's effort last time out. Got a 1:16 time form U.S. speed figure, a 0 thoroughgraph number. I expect a better effort this time out. I think the horse is going to get a lot of pace in front of him. Not much better than Jose Ortiz on this circuit. Loves this racetrack. I think this horse can set a good trip. Let those horses we mentioned earlier in the segment set a fast pace, and he could motor home. I like this horse a lot. I don't think I'll get 15-1, but anything double digits, I'm probably going to bet this horse through the window, and I don't do a lot of win bets through the window anymore, more of an exotic player. But I think this horse certainly warrants a big-time look with those connections, considering the last race this horse ran. Look for Gold for the King to be coming late, and I think it's good enough to get this win.
And I agree with you, Bob. I actually took a long look at this one. Obviously, this one has yet to miss the money. His only 2/3, I guess you could say, his worst performance of the 7 races that he's run have come over wet and sloppy tracks, running behind horses like Syndergaard and Bobby on Fleek, as well as put it on the back. So basically, what I also see out of this horse is, going to run against open company for the first time. And that's what scares me a little bit about this one. But I definitely think from a pace perspective, this one is ready to roll. And Charlton Baker has had great success on Belmont Stakes Day, not just in the big race, but on the undercard as well. If we look back to last year, we're joking. So I respect you 100% for that pick, Bob. I'll break down my top pick here, and that's going to be number 10, Long Haul Bay for Chad Brown, making his 3rd start today. First, let's get into some statistics here. Chad Brown is 26% with dirt sprinters and grade stakes races that have won their last race. This one was ultra impressive in the Bay Shore, stretching out to 7 furlongs, from 6 furlongs in his debut, where you can kind of tell he wanted more. That debut race, Horoscope came back to win, who crushed that field by 10, exclusive zip as well. So exiting a key maiden race, going first time facing winners in a grade 3. You know how Chad Brown always has these ones ready, and he sure showed it that day over on April 8th, Wood Memorial Day. Workouts have been pretty steady. He actually had a nice workout, bull-out drill on May 27th. I think this one, as well as the 4, is a horse that's going to sit off the pace, and ultimately, I think that's where your winner is going to come from. 5-1 on Chad Brown. I actually think that price will stay around that area, given the other talent, I guess you could say, that we'll see in this field. So I'm going to bank on those odds sticking around, and hopefully Chad Brown, who has 30 horses entered for this long weekend, is ready to rock and roll, and we can cash with this one.
I know he's been on Long Haul Bay the first 2 times out, and certainly it hadn't been a problem. Any concern for you that in a race like this, Chad doesn't go to his top 2 riders in Javier Castellano or Joel Rosario, and Manny Franco stays aboard? Or do you think it's a situation where, look, if it ain't broke, don't fix it? We've won the first 2 with Manny. We're going to stick with him here.
And I think that's exactly what it is. This horse has yet to show any discomfort when racing or any signs of, needing to switch things up. And that's a big thing for me. Like you said, Bob, when something's not broke, no need to fix it. And, I think IRAD, obviously landing for Steve Asmussen here, is perfectly fine by me. But this horse hasn't really shown any quarrels, winning the Bayshore by 3.5 lengths to really seem why they would need to rush to a jockey like Irad or Castellano, when Manny Franco, I believe, is sitting 2nd place in the New York jockey standings.
Yeah, I'll say this as well. Chad Brown doesn't put horses in races for fun. For him to take this horse from a maiden special to put him right in a grade 3 stakes race in New York says a lot. And then the horse won the race. And I guess the example I would use is Chad Brown had a lot of confidence in this horse named Cloud Computing that went from a maiden special weight race to running the Gotham. And then eventually went on to be your Preakness winner. Chad has certainly emerged as one of the best trainers in the country. For me, I personally think he's top 2 or 3. And I certainly respect your pick here. It will be an all rolling exotics for me. I was just looking for a little bit more of a price, but I think the 10 horse is as good as anybody in this field. And the scary thing is only 2 starts.
Yeah.
Yet.
And I agree with you. I'm definitely going to get your 4 involved, Bob, and maybe do some 4-10 all, 4-10. Work really with something like that. Maybe get recruiting ready in some key spots there. But for me, I am throwing out American Anthem. I just don't think he has what it takes today and will be up against it. So, Bob, give us your pick one.
At a short price, Andrew. I think you're doing the right thing.
So, Bob, give us your pick one last time for the Woody Stevens.
Yeah, sure. The 4 horse Gold for the King, Jose Ortiz up.
All right, and I'm on number 10 at 5-1, Long Haul Bay for trainer Chad Brown. So let's not waste any time. Let's get right into the next race here, and that's race 9 at Belmont Park, the Metropolitan, the Met Mile, a $1.2 million race. Last year, Bob, we did the show together. I was all over Frosted, and what a performance that was, breaking the stakes record. I don't think there's a Frosted in this spot, Bob. What do you think?
No, far from it, my friend. This is still a good race, but there is no Frosted in this race today.
And we wind up here with another Bob Baffert favorite, and that's number 9, More Spirit at 5-2. Bob, what do you make of this one?
I get why he's the favorite, Andrew. I personally think he's your second most likely winner. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm definitely intrigued to hear your thoughts on this. Isn't Sharp Azteca just the best horse in this field? And I guess the only reason that he's not the favorite is because of the Dubai hangover, which has been well documented. Horses go over there and run and then come back here, and maybe takes them a while to get settled. So to answer your question, very, very good horse. I think much more likely of a winner in this spot than Bob's other horse we discussed in race 7. However, I think he's got a horse to beat that's a lot better than him, and that's Sharp Azteca.
And Sharp Azteca, obviously, no questioning what this colt has done. And Bob, kudos to you who uncovered this horse in the Pat Day Mile last year on Derby Day at big odds of 13-1. Absolutely crushed that group and really hasn't gone on to do much wrong ever since. Yeah. Like you said, it has to overcome that Dubai hangover that we see affect so many horses coming back. What I've read on Sharp Azteca, on vet reports, actually, for Jorge Navarro, I guess were a couple head scratchers, and something that didn't really, scream confidence. But I think a healthy Sharp Azteca, and I'm not a veterinarian by any means, so maybe there was just some protocol stuff. Sure. But I think obviously a healthy Sharp Azteca, I would agree, is better than More Spirit. Obviously, these two might be going head to head, and I think that poses a problem, obviously, for both of them. So, Bob, obviously, them two going to the front end. What do you make of the pace?
I think it has a chance to be hot, but hasn't Sharp Azteca proved in the past it doesn't matter how fast you go, he can still continue to run on? I don't know historically how fast that Pat Day Mile was, but I think it's probably one of the fastest we've ever seen. I know the race caller that day was Travis Stone was very surprised that Sharp Azteca was able to keep going, and I certainly was as well. I think another key here, Andrew, to Sharp Azteca, no matter what type of pace scenario is Paco Lopez. A significant upgrade from Edgar Zayas. I think it's been way overdue for Edgar Zayas to get benched here on Sharp Azteca. Paco Lopez, probably the best front-end rider we have in our game. He just seems to be able to get horses to settle on the front end no matter how fast they go, and he's got one of the best clocks in his head. Do I think they'll go fast? I think they got a chance to, but I think Sharp Azteca's fast is faster than More Spirit could ever be. And I think those two will be battling up front. I think it could compromise More Spirit. I'm not sure how much it's going to compromise Sharp Azteca, unless you're right about the vet reports. If this horse is not healthy, which it certainly doesn't look at from the workouts, then he may not be able to see out the distance. But, Andrew, when they turn for home, I think they're going to all have to catch the 5.
And I agree, and against this horse. So, Bob, let's break into our selections here. Who's your top pick for the Met Mile?
Andrew, I'm torn here between two horses. I don't want to be too far off of it. I'm going to talk to you about the 12 first, Awesome Slew. I think this horse is coming into his own. I listened to Ron Anderson earlier this week on the Steve Vick show. Ron Anderson is one of the best jockey agents that we have in this game, and he's the jockey agent of Joel Rosario. He didn't say this, Andrew, but he said without saying that he felt like this was Joel's best horse on Saturday. And Joel is one of our better jockeys in North America. And certainly he's going to get on a lot of good horses on Saturday. And for Ron Anderson to be that confident, I think it says a lot about Awesome Slew. I was on him April 8th at Keeneland. He came from 6 lengths off the lead that day, going 7 furlongs to win the race at a racetrack that day that was not conducive for horses to come from off of it. And just came up just short May 6th to Limousine Liberal that day on a racetrack that was absolutely favoring speed on the inside. So I think he's a horse that you have to watch out for. But the thing is, Andrew, you know how I am. I like horses that are more forwardly placed. And how far is he going to be from off of it? And is he good enough to run down Sharp Azteca? Because I think he's going to be 7, 8 lengths off the lead, maybe when they turn for home. He was 7 lengths off the lead February 11th against Sharp Azteca at Gulfstream Park to run second to lose by 4.5. But I think he's better now than he was then. I think at the end of the day, though, Andrew, he's going to be bet below the 6-1 morning line. I'll tell you another horse that I like that I think is in peak form, and that's the 2-horse Rally Cry. Todd Pletcher, Johnny Velasquez, third off the layoff, cutting back from a mile and a 16, back to a mile, ran 2 -1s on Thoroughbred, and then time form last time out, going 2 turns, gave him a 1:30 time form U.S. speed figure. That's picking them up and putting them down. Great form. He might set 3rd or 4th, and if Sharp Azteca isn't 100%, I think More Spirit's going to back out of it if he tries to run with Sharp Azteca. Johnny V may look around and nobody's there. He may get first run on the 12. I think it's 2-12, 12-2. I think the 12's better than the 2, but I think the 2 has a tactical edge. So at the end of the day, I'll probably end up with Rally Cry. It's really going to depend on the odds.
And obviously Rally Cry, one of Todd Pletcher's best 4-year-olds in the barn for Paul Pompa, who just is another great one for the sport. This one hasn't really done much wrong except going 2 turns for the first time at Aqueduct over the inner track and losing, in the Gotham last year to Shagaf, who was actually pretty impressive on the inner track that season. I'm in agreement with you that Rally Cry is definitely, in my opinion, without looking at odds, perhaps the second choice to Sharp Azteca if we're looking at it from that perspective. And I think I'm kind of reading this race the same as you. Definitely looking for something that's going to come off the pace, but I thought it was going to heat up a little bit more, so that's why I wanted a horse that was going to sit just a little farther back than a horse like Awesome Slew. And that's number 8, Tom's Ready, 15-1 for Dallas Stewart and Javier Castellano. This one goes second off the layoff after running in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile last year and finishing in even 5th behind Tarmar Cruz and Gunrunner. Ran in that Churchill Down handicap behind Limousine Liberal and behind Awesome Slew, was gaining ground. You could definitely tell this one wanted a little bit more, so I think that's why this 1-turn mile is really going to hit this one between the eyes. And obviously, I agree with you, Bob, and I think everybody can agree that track that day was favoring way towards speed. So I think on a fair track, maybe Tom's Ready gets up there. Who knows? The horse was 20-1. Dallas Stewart, 57%, second off the layoff, on dirt with graded stakes horses that finished in the money last out. 8 for 8 in the money, 5 for 8 winners there. Going back more into the pace, I think this one's going to sit, about 6 to 7 lengths off and try to make that one run. I don't think that they would be serious on this horse if Javier Castellano was not to get aboard. I mean, you're calling the best jockey in to ride a 15-1 shot for a horse that, I mean, let's face it, isn't really the sharpest horse. I mean, if I didn't tell you, who was riding who, I don't think you could say that, Javier Castellano would take a first glance at that horse, which I think is pretty saying to Castellano, who doesn't ride for Stewart much often. This one's buyers have been improving since the end of last year. So I'm just going to take a shot here. I mean, this one won the Woody Stevens last year over this course on this day from the 9 in the field of 12. So I definitely think he can face the traffic problems, get comfortable early on with Castellano, who has the greatest clock in the game when it comes to turning for home. And I'm hoping to catch value here. So Tom's Ready at 15-1. I think this one can drift up a little bit, and that's where I'll fall here in the Met Mile.
He's not for me, Andrew, but 2 points I want to make here as to why I see what you're doing. And you made more than Javier Castellano getting aboard anyone in a race like this. He means serious business. And secondly, I'm a big fan of 6 furlong works right before race. And you're talking about a solid 6 furlong, 112 maintenance drill to get this horse ready to go a mile. He's certainly going to get the pace. Is he good enough? That's yet to be seen. But it gets no better that I've ever seen than Javier Castellano, especially on days like this. So I really can't argue with your selection.
And I just wanted to ask you a quick question, Bob, about some other horses in here that might be able to sneak up here into the exotics. Let's look at 2 horses here. Number 1 being Mohegan. Obviously, what happened to this horse? Ever since the Fountain of Youth, this one has been away from the winner's circle and by a distant amount of lengths. So what do you make of this one? You think this one can wake up here, making his second start of his 4-year-old career?
Andrew, this is one of the more frustrating horses that I have tried to handicap over the past couple of years, and here's why. I'm a huge fan of Kieran McLaughlin for obvious reasons. I mean, what he's going through on a consistent basis and to still be able to train at the level in which he trains is just something from out of this world. And he has had so much confidence in this horse, and I know this horse has let him down so many times. And you look at him and you say, the physical tangibles are there. The connections are there. He's always ridden by a credible jockey. Kieran McLaughlin is a credible trainer. And he just has never found himself since he left Gulfstream Park. But really, if you want to break it down into even more detail, who was he beating at Gulfstream? And really, how fast was he going? I hate to say it, Andrew, but I just don't think this horse is that good at all. I feel bad for Kieran because he keeps going back to the well with him. Clearly, he disagrees with me. He thinks this horse is good enough. That's why he's got him in a Grade 1 stakes race. This horse wins. I don't, but I'm rooting for Kieran. So if I'm going to lose to somebody, I want to lose to a guy like this. He believes in this horse. I want nothing to do with him.
Yeah, and this horse, seems to be working out strong, firing a couple bullet drills, but I'm in agreement with you, Bob. I think this one has just hit a wrong turn and doesn't look like he may be coming back, but let's see if he proves us wrong. The other horse I want to touch base with you on, Bob, real quick before we move on is number 7, Economic Model for Chad Brown and Irad Ortiz. How could you throw out the connections? Blinkers go off. If you look back in the past, this one has run exceptional without the blinkers. The only mishap was in that Tampa Bay Derby where this one just faded quickly. So what do you make of this one? Coming off that layoff, we know how dangerous Chad Brown is off on that, between 1 and 2 month layoff area. He's raced at the 1-turn mile at Aqueduct. Hasn't really done too well in recent starts, but what do you make of this one?
I like Economic Model. I've been a big fan of Economic Model for a long time. I think he's been hindered by some questionable rides in the past. And the questionable rides I'm referencing is because of the guy that's on him today. So, sure, could he win? Absolutely. Will I include in my exotics? Maybe. He's not an A horse for me, but can he win? He can. But I just think he needs the best pace setup and a great ride. And look, Irad is known to do that from time to time, but there's other jockeys that I would prefer on a horse such as this. I like him. I just don't know if he's going to get the trip he needs and the ride he needs to beat some really good horses.
And we'll see. And we always know how dangerous Chad Brown is, especially when teaming up with Irad Ortiz. This one is 4 starts, 2 wins, a second and a third. Never out of the money here at Belmont Park for Economic Model.
One horse I wanted to mention to you, sir, as far as a very long shot play for me, and I just wanted to mention to the viewers if they have
for sure
about other races, and that's the 10-horse Virtual Machine at 30-1. This horse, 4th off the claim for Canizzo. Manny Franco gets aboard. Obviously faced a lot less March 24th and February 16th, but you cannot deny numerically impressive. If you were to go back and look at the video, Andrew, visually impressive, won those 2 races by a combined 17.5 lengths, and then finished second to a horse that would have been favorite in this race in Connect and ran at 126 time form U.S. speed figure that day. He may not win, but he shouldn't be 30-1. If you, to those listening and watching, if you've got an extra few dollars to throw a horse in that may change your life at the end of the day, maybe Virtual Machine's that. I just wanted to mention that. He shouldn't be 30-1. He's ranked too well this year to be 30-1, and I'm going to certainly include on backup tickets.
And I agree with you, Bob. And like I mentioned before, David Canizzo does excellent work on the New York circuit. Maybe he doesn't have too many graded stakes horses, but what he does regardless is just excellent. And the numbers speak for themselves. He's not a Todd Pletcher. He's not a Chad Brown. He's not a Kieran McLaughlin. But if you really get rid of the big name trainers, I think Canizzo's at the top of your list. So I agree with you. This one can definitely blow things up at 30-1, sitting right off the pace with Manny Franco. So let's get moving here, Bob, and we'll go on to our next race here on the card, and that's the Manhattan, 1.25 miles on the inner turf here for $1 million. We see a lot of old familiar faces here, Bob, and your favorite is number 3, World Approval for Mark Casse and Julian Leparoux. What do you make of this one?
If World Approval wins, I don't like this horse at all. I think he's not fast enough to beat some these other horses in this race. I think it's a 3-horse race, and I think all 3 horses are trained by none other than Chad Brown. It's good to be Chad Brown, Andrew. That's my thoughts about World Approval. Again, Beach Patrol, time tests, and obviously Wake Forest are the 3 horses to beat in this race.
So, Bob, if you think it lands between the 3 of the Chad Brown entries here, which one are you landing on? Assuming that you're landing on one of them.
Yes, Andrew. And in fact, I'm going to land on the highest priced horse of the Chad Brown barn, and that's the 2-horse Wake Forest. I understand Castellano and going to Irad Ortiz is a jockey downgrade, but it's not like it's that much of a downgrade. I mean, Chad Brown and Irad have hooked up many times for a lot of wins on this turf course going this long at this racetrack. So it's certainly run races that are good enough to win in this race, including a race 2 starts back at Gulfstream Park on March 4th, where he won the race. He got a 121 Timeform U.S. speed figure that day. I know what I'm going to get out of Wake Forest. It's going to be a consistent run. Is he known to be a hanger? Yes, he is, Andrew. That doesn't mean he always hangs. He can get the job done at the right time. He's going to get a firm turf course today. He's going to get the 1.25 miles in which I think he wants. And look, time test may be a freak show. According to Craig Milkowski, that's exactly what he is, and I respect Craig and those guys over time for him. You're not going to get anywhere near 5-1 on time test. I think you might get 8 or 10-1 on Wake Forest. He's a consistent sort. Is good enough to win this race. So I'm going to go with Wake Forest at 8-1.
And can't knock you on your selection there, Bob. Wake Forest obviously coming second off the layoff. Raced over a yielding turf course last time out. Maybe he liked it, maybe he didn't. But either way, we're going back to Irad Ortiz. No quarrels with that one there. Obviously, we look at the other Chad Brown entries. Beach Patrol making a second start off the layoff. Laurent Giroux coming in. Stuck on the rail there, but okay, because this one does have some early speed. And time test, who ran in the Fort Marcy last time out with Irad Ortiz. Got nosed out of there over a yielding turf course. But this one should be ready. I agree with you. It's going to be very tough to beat Chad Brown. But, Bob, I think you know exactly where I'm landing. If you can take a guess, would you know?
I really thought you were going to take a shot with Beach Patrol.
Oh, Bob, as much as I would love to go back to our old friend Beach Patrol, I'm going to go back to even another friend of ours, and that's World Approval. I think this one gets the job done today, and I think that Grade 2 Dixie last time out was just something that no other horse has run as of late. And not to knock anyone else here, but I think in the last 2 starts, this one in the start of the 5-year-old career has just been fantastic. The buyers have been increasing. Julian Lebreu had a choice of 3 horses. He stays here. Mark Cassidy second off the layoff. So you know there's going to be some sort of improvement or just a growth of the horse. This one was in this race last year, finished behind Flintshire and Ironicus, and I don't think there's any Flintshire or Ironicus here. So I'm hoping this one, who I believe is a little bit faster than Beach Patrol, is going to go up there, set the pace, and try to take this group wire to wire. Not much else I could say about this one. I was just really impressed by the Dixie. I think the horses he beat are a tad better than the ones we'll see today, like Projected and Black Type. Nonetheless, though, I think this one has a perfect pace setup. As long as he can put away Beach Patrol, I think everybody else is going to be closing from late. So that's where I'll land, Bob. I'm sure you're shaking your head. So hopefully World Approval can get the job done here in the Manhattan.
Let's see. I think you're going to get an overlay on World Approval because from everything I'm hearing, time test, the 4-horse is going to get absolutely pounded at the window and is going to end up going off the favorite. And I think this horse, of all the horses that are in this field, he's the horse that has a chance to be a freak. I think he's going to end up going off the favorite. So I think we're going to get an overlay on World Approval.
Hopefully one of those is the winner. Bob, obviously you being on Wake Forest, I'm on World Approval. Let's look at just 2 other horses I want to touch base on here. And the first one of that is Diversadero, who gets a jockey change here to Johnny Velasquez, coming off that Turf Classic win over at Churchill Downs on Derby Day.
I don't like the connections here, Andrew. Their numbers on the turf they just don't stand out to me. This horse has faced weaker recently and has just not been able to get the job done. If this horse was capable, in my opinion, of being a legitimate contender in this race today, you got to win. And not only do you have to win, you got to win convincingly. This horse lost by a nose. If you watch the replay, Turning for Home, and I did today, No excuse. 3.5 lengths off the lead down the stretch and just seemed to hang. I just don't think he's good enough.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And obviously, like you said there, was hanging a little bit. And that race back on Derby Day, Turf was playing the closers there, and no better than a hanger than Beach Patrol, and that's who he breezed by last time out. This one ran in the Manhattan last year, finished fifth behind other horses like I just mentioned, Flintshire, Ironicus, and obviously World Approval. This one's going to be a toss for me today. I think he actually may take some money too, so hopefully that leads to some overlays elsewhere. The other horse I wanted to talk to you about, Bob, was number 9, Sadler's Joy for Tom Albatrani. Doesn't always have a hot barn, but he does have some good horses, and this is one of them. And he brings no other than Mike Smith, one of the best jockeys in the country who always wins big races, to ride this one. What do you make of this one?
Yeah, I guess I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth here. The numbers are low. The respect I have for Mike Smith in comparison to others on days like this, why would Mike come across the country and then land on this horse on the biggest turf race of the day on Belmont Stakes Day if he didn't think he had a chance to win? He's going to have to come from the clouds, in my opinion. But Mike can do wonders. Maybe he can get this horse to be interactive earlier in the race. He's going to have to be. I guess I would say Sadler's Joy has a bigger chance to upset than the 7.
And I agree with you to an extent there, Bob. And like you mentioned, this one has no early speed whatsoever, and I think that may be this one's downfall, especially going a little shorter than this one is used to. However, it does have a win going 1.25 miles over this track to mention. Another thing I would like to mention on this horse is I just don't think he's been facing any horses that you can compare to any horses in here. Tablib, Design for War, Patterson Cross, all good horses, but in comparison to what we're seeing today, I just don't think this one really, fits in that rank. So actually 6-1. When I did morning line odds myself, I had this one at more to 10-1 odds. So maybe that's what we'll see. And obviously, like we said, we knew some horses were going to take some more money. So maybe this is where we'll see this one land.
Andrew, what did you have morning line for Wake Forest, and were you surprised by the 8-1 morning line?
Yeah, for Wake Forest, I had this one at 5-1. So the 8-1 was a little bit surprising. I thought the Chad Browns would take much more money. I actually thought that the 4 time tests would open up as the 3-1 favorite, and I had World Approval at 9-2. So I guess kind of in the same ballpark there. But Wake Forest getting that overlay, not so much of a surprise because, like we both mentioned, I think the 4 is going to take some money. So you may be able to land right around here, 8-1. Either way, you're getting $18 back on I'd Rather Ortiz and Chad Brown. That's substantial within itself. So I think the only real odd changes we're going to see is the 4 taking money and overlay on the 9, especially.
Yeah, I don't understand how Beach Patrol, who is a much bigger hanger than Wake Forest, can be half the odds in which Wake Forest is. That is very perplexing to me, and time test to open up at 5-1 is even more perplexing. I guess it's one of those situations where the odds maker didn't know what to expect from this horse on a firm going second time out, but I expect time test to take a big step forward. But for me, again, I can't stress enough, I don't know what I'm going to get out of time test on a firm going 1.25 miles for the first time in this country. I know what I'm going to get out of Wake Forest, and it's certainly better than 8-1. And I'll take 8-1 all day on a horse that's going to be very consistent and give his best effort each and every time out.
And Judman is very very confident in this run of number 4 time test. So we'll see with this one getting back to a firm turf course for what may be the first time in his career. Obviously facing running over softer grounds over there in Great Britain. So Bobby, who are you on one more time?
I'm on the 2-horse Wake Forest at 8-1, simply, guys, because I think time test is going to get bet, and Wake Forest, from a value standpoint, considering his past running lines, I think he is certainly the best value play that I've seen on this card all day.
And I'm on number 3, World Approval, coming off that Grade 2 Dixie win here in the Manhattan, the 10th race here at Belmont Park. So, Bob, let's get into it. The biggest race of the day, the Belmont Stakes, 1.5 miles on the dirt, $1.5 million is up for risk here. Number 7, Irish War Cry is your 7-2 morning line favorite. For Grand Motion, Regime Mirage. Bob, first things first, I guess if there was anybody to be the favorite, it would be this horse. But are you surprised in it by any way? Because I was a little perplexed that this one would open up at 7-2.
I think this horse is the horse to beat for whatever it's worth. And I do understand why this horse is the favorite. I think there's 2 races in this horse's running line that are better than anything else in this field that's ever been run. And I think he's going to be forwardly placed. And I think bettors see that as well. And I think the morning line odds makers saw that. And with the defection of what would have been the obvious horse to beat in the favorite, Classic Empire, this horse makes the most sense to be the favorite. And again, Andrew, the 1.5 miles is the great equalizer here. So we don't know if any of these horses want to go that far. But if there has to be a favorite in every race we run, and this horse deserves to be the favorite.
And I agree with you. I guess 7-2 just kind of, I wouldn't say scared me. I guess this, I was thinking more like 9-2. Honestly, I think anybody can really win this race, and I think that's a reason why I was so surprised. Let's look into some other horses before we get into our top picks. Let's talk about the second choice favorites. If Icarus here, the number 11 horse coming in from Japan at 4-1. Bob, obviously there's not much to really read on this horse, coming from all these international races. But what do you make of this one?
Well, I'm probably going to give myself the kiss of death here and jinx myself, but I think this field is bad. But if this horse wins this race, this field is even worse than what I think it is, because I don't see this at all. I can't believe this horse is 4-1. I think it's one of the most egregious morning lines that I've ever seen at a level like this when we're talking about classic races. I watched the UAE Derby twice after this morning line came out to see what I was missing. I'm not even going to hold against him that he lost to Thunder Snow, who didn't even get a quarter of a mile down the racetrack in the Kentucky Derby. It's that visually he was extremely tired just going 1 mile and 3/16. He was all over the racetrack. He was plodding up and down. The tail, he just looked like a very tired racehorse. There was nothing to say he could get 1.25 miles if they brought him over here for the Kentucky Derby, much less 1.5 miles. Again, he's probably going to win now because I said that. Andrew, I don't see it at all. I don't understand how this horse is 4-1, and I don't think he's going to run on the money. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and I'm in agreement with you 1,000% here, Bob. I just don't know how this one is 4-1. I think you can make an argument that Taproot should be 4-1. If anybody's going to be 4-1 in this spot here, I think that one's much more talented than this one. And like you said, there's not much to read on this horse, obviously, coming in. But I watched that UAE Derby as well. And like you said, Bob, this one just it didn't seem like this one wanted to run the second half of the race. Was all over the place. It actually kind of felt bad for the horse the way he was moving around. Just kind of looked too weird. And then obviously finishing behind Thunder Snow, who like you said, wanted no part of the Kentucky Derby whatsoever. So now you got to bank on a horse coming from, really all the way across the globe, and then bank on 4-1 odds. I don't know, but I'll tell you what, I have seen a lot of people that I respect when it comes to selecting horses be high on this one, and I'm just a little bit baffled by this. I don't know. I don't want any part of this whatsoever, but maybe it's the Japan effect with Lonnie finishing third last year in the Belmont Stakes, and Naira doing the new initiative to get horses from Japan every year into the Belmont Stakes. I don't know, but this one is definitely not for me.
Well, Andrew, my rebuttal to that would be, and I know it's not from you, but Lonnie ran all 3 races over here. Okay?
Yeah.
And had had a lot of workouts in the U.S., was used to running counterclockwise, and he didn't have foot issues. This horse is being shipped. He's now got foot issues that emerged this morning. He didn't look that good to begin with at Maidan, and now he's 4-1. Andrew, I will be shocked if he wins this race.
Yeah, and I'm just it. If there was something other than the term toss out, I would choose it. This one isn't going to be on any of my tickets whatsoever. I'll let this one beat me, especially at 4-1 in what I think is a wide open field. You have looking at Lee, who ran in the Kentucky Derby, finished second, and then a closing game there in the Preakness last time out. This one's going to try to run in every single of the Triple Crown races. Obviously, at what point does this one get tired? But you could tell that this one loves the added distance. Bob, what do you make of looking at Lee?
Never been a fan of looking at Lee. Thought he got an unbelievable ride by Corey Lanery on Kentucky Derby Day to just sit on the rail and pray that the seas parted, and they did. He come up the rail and finished second. I thought that had more to do with the ride than it actually did the horse, and I think he also moved forward because of the wet track. He's not going to get a wet track today, and you know as well as I do, and most watching this show, that closers are up against it in this race. The majority of the winners that we have seen in our lifetime have been on or near the lead. I know that was not the case last year with Creator, but again, if you look at the statistics, more of them are winning the race on the lead than they are off. This horse might be last at some juncture of this race, or certainly close to it. Another horse that I don't see, Timeform US picks him to win. I don't get it. If he wins, I'm not playing this horse.
All right. Just one more horse we'll look at before breaking into our picks, and that's number 1, Twisted Tom for Chad Brown and Javier Castellano. This one coming off back-to-back wins at Laurel and then a win dating back to January 28th, making this one having winners of 3 in a row from Chad Brown. Finished 6th in the debut for Chad Brown coming from the George Weaver barn. Obviously, this one's 20-1. This one draws the rail, has some inside speed. The buyer numbers on my end just obviously do not stack up to anything close, but you have to respect the connections here and the fact that Chad Brown would even put this one in this spot coming off 2 restricted stakes races at Laurel Park. Bob, what do you make of Twisted Tom?
Well, I mean, I know you said you wanted to wait to give our selections, but this is my pick. And I'm taking Twisted Tom at 20-1. And here are my reasons. This race is, from a talent standpoint, in my opinion, is not very good. When Irish War Cry is your favorite and Epicaris is your second choice, I think it says all you need to know about the talent when it comes to this race. Chad Brown is, as I mentioned earlier, one of the best trainers in the country. He continues to get better. He is without question the best trainer on turf that I've ever seen, and he's closing the gap to Bob Baffert and Todd Pletcher with horses on the dirt. He's proved that this year as well. And another thing, Javier Castellano jumping aboard first time for Chad Brown. The numbers are ridiculous. It's video game like. Javier sees fit here to team up with his main man. I think this horse is going to be aggressive from the bell with the one hole with an aggressive rider like Javier Castellano. I don't look for this horse to be too far from the pace. And why would Chad Brown tell his connections that he works for, hey, put up $75,000
exactly
to put this horse in this race? And Andrew, that was when Classic Empire was still supposed to be in this race, and his numbers hovered over this field. There's something about this horse. Chad Brown's a better handicapper than me and you. He proves it every day. He tells his connections, hey, spend 75 to put this horse in the race. And oh, by the way, Javier Castellano, the best jockey in the world. Why don't you get aboard? I don't know, man. PPs, I can't back him. Stats, trainer-jockey combination, putting up $75K to get him in here, that you can back. I'll roll with Twisted Tom at 20-1 for Javier Castellano and Chad Brown. When are you ever going to get that?
And you're certainly right, Bob. And I respect this one. Not as much as you do, but I definitely respect this one. Not my top pick. However, when I did my 1, 2, 3s, did have this one as a B horse. I think this one, like you said, Bob, is going to be on the front end, and that's where you need to be to win the Belmont Stakes, as shown the last couple of years. So where do you really want to see this one? Do you want to see this one, covered and saving some ground early, hoping this one makes one run, or do you want to see him on the front end?
I want to see him second shelf. Timeform's got him back further than I would like to see him. I'd like to see him anywhere between 3 to 4 lengths off the lead if the horse has enough tactical speed to be there. But whether he does or not, Chad knows what he's going to do, and Chad thinks he can be a player when they turn for home. But me, visually, from what I saw from his replays, he wants to be near the lead. And going from 1 1/8 where he was only a length off the lead, going to 1.5 miles, wouldn't you think the horse would move forward when it comes to a pace and drawing the one hole? Javier's very aggressive. I think the horse is going to be in the race and involved early, but I don't want to see him get caught into a speed duel with Meantime and Irish War Cry, because I think those are the 2 horses that are going to go to the lead.
And definitely in agreement with you here, Bob. Irish War Cry, definitely the main pace setter here, and will probably be the the first jump out of the gate. So I'm with you. And like I said, obviously, you're never going to get 20-1 on connections like this. And like you mentioned, putting up $75,000 for a race like this, if it was any other trainer, you would just simply scratch your head. But with Chad Brown doing it and getting Javier Castellano, there's got to be something behind it. Workouts, pretty progressive here, working exclusively at Saratoga last month and coming back here in Belmont, nicely spaced workouts. So there are some signs that prove that this one is going to be ready. So, Bob, you're on the one, Twisted Tom, and I'll go right to the outside of you with my selection. That's number 2, Taprit. I think this one is ready today. The Kentucky Derby, the race on paper was not that impressive, but if you watch the replay, it was somewhat visually impressive. This one was making up a lot of late ground. Jose Ortiz didn't really have anywhere to put this one early on, but like you said, when we were talking about with looking at Lee, when the sea kind of parted, this one was weaving in and out of traffic and made up some good ground, finishing 6 of 20 that day. 2 back in the bluegrass. Didn't break at all, was very unprepared, was getting very washy in the post parade, and lost to IRAP, who went wire to wire that day over what may have been considered a speed bias racetrack. Obviously, this one's Tampa Bay Derby race was what put him on the map. Finished second to Sam F. Davis, to McCracken, who was undefeated at that time. So I think this one has been running with some great company. Coming into this spot, how's he going to fare with the distance? I'm not really sure, but I do have some statistics here that would show signs to why I think this one can greatly improve and take to it. First of all, Tapit has produced 2 of the last couple of Belmont Stakes winners in Tonalist and Creator. This one was a $1.2 million investment here. So that Eclipse Thoroughbreds is trying to get this one rocking and rolling here. They don't want to skip this one. They want to bring this one home to New York and get the job done. The 4 of the last 8 Belmont winners were in the Kentucky Derby, but skipped the Preakness. So maybe that's a sign here that will continue growing. I think this one, who has a bunch of tactical speed, sits right off the leaders and is making that first run, coming after Irish Warcry. Is he going to like the distance? There's some pedigree in his kin that suggests that he will, but 6-1 here, I'm willing to bank on that. I don't think Irish Warcry, though. I do agree that this one is pretty much the one to beat, I guess you could say. I think, like you said, Bob, it says a lot when Irish Warcry is the one to beat in a field like this. I don't think the field's that good, so I'll take my chances rolling with Todd Pletcher, hopefully trying to get the job done in what should be a tremendous 2017 Belmont Stakes.
Another horse I wanted to mention, and by the way, before I mention that horse, look, you know how I feel about Todd Pletcher, and seeing him win the Kentucky Derby was one of my favorite things to see in horse racing in a long, long time. And he's another guy that I don't mind losing to. So you can't go wrong with Todd Pletcher and Jose Ortiz when you're talking about connections. And I don't think the horse should be 6-1 simply because of Todd's track record at Belmont Park and Jose Ortiz's track record on the New York circuit. Another horse I wanted to mention that will be on my pick 4 tickets, and I would not be surprised in the least that would win this race, Andrew, is Gormley, the 3 horse. And here's why I say that. April 8th, the Santa Anita Derby, looking back on it, wasn't that bad after all. Battle of Midway, who I actually made a wager on in the Derby, couldn't believe he was 49-1, ran a very valiant 3rd place in the Kentucky Derby. And Gormley beat Battle of Midway that day in the Santa Anita Derby. And I thought he had a lot of trouble in the Kentucky Derby, Andrew. I didn't think he really had much of a chance. Bumped hard, forced out, and then Victor just wrapped up. He wasn't going to lose by 14.5 lengths. Now, he might have lost by 9, but a lot of people that look at PPs take that into account. Did you lose by 9? Did you lose by 14.5? I think this horse has a chance. I think he'll be in the race early. And you want to talk about pedigree. Now, I'm not a big pedigree handicapper, right? But I think pedigree handicapping for a race like this has some merit. And the reason I say that is these horses are probably never going to go 1.5 miles on the dirt again. And Gormley is, I believe, Curlin and Zenyatta. Those horses have been very, very, very successful going long. They can run all day. Gormley's got a shot here, Andrew, and he shouldn't be 8-1, I don't believe. But obviously, they all can't be 4-1. So at some point, somebody's got to be something from an odds perspective that I don't agree with. This horse got a chance to win the race. and I'm going to include him in my pick fours. And I think there's other horses in here at lower odds, such as Epicaris, that Gormley's better than.
Yeah, and I'm in agreement with you here. Obviously, this one winning the front runner last year, then immediately shipped into the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Didn't do too much there, and then last down the Kentucky Derby. Like you said, if you watch a lot of these jockeys, turning for home once they know their horse is done, or okay, well, we're not catching 10 lengths and weaving through 8 horses of traffic to win this race. They pull the horses up. You know what I mean? And most that's the most ethical thing. And I'm not saying these guys are running out of purse money, but what I'm trying to say is that Victor Espinosa in that spot is trying to reserve this one, for the longevity of this one's career, and especially for a spot like this. Bob, a statistic I read before applies to this, that 4 out of the 8 last Belmont Stakes winners ran in the Kentucky Derby without running in the Preakness. This one's Santa Anita Derby was ultra impressive in the San Felipe. Just didn't look, ready to go that day, and was once again eased up if you watch that, and that was off a little bit of a layoff there. I agree with you that this one is going to be live. Where do you see this one sitting? Because this one has shown the ability to wire groups, and this one has also shown the ability to rate.
I think Victor, I didn't used to like Victor as much as I do now, and Victor's been at this racetrack, obviously been successful at this racetrack in the past. This horse does have a lot of versatility. I think he can do whatever he wants. At the end of the day, I think the 7 and the 9 are going to set the pace. And I think Gormley could be right around where Twisted Tom is if Twisted Tom has the tactical speed that I think he's capable of having. There's no question about it. I think Gormley could set 3rd or 4th in this race. And with the pedigree that he has, if that really matters, I mean, if you could go one of those situations where Victor looks around and says, nobody's coming, and his horse just keeps plodding home. And sometimes plodding in a race like this is all you need to do. And I think Gormley can get the distance. And there's no way I think you can not include him on exotic tickets, be alive for a lot of life-changing money.
And I agree with you. This is a race where you're going to have to go deep in, and maybe I'll be the guy to hit the all but one button, throwing out the Japanese Epicaris, because I don't think that one has what it takes at all. So, Bob, give us your selection one more time for the 2017 Belmont Stakes.
Twisted Tom, can't back it up on PPs, Andrew, but for all the points I mentioned to you earlier, and I'll shorten it up, Javier Castellano, Chad Brown, 20-1. You may never get that again this year.
I agree with you, Bob. And I'm on number 2, Tapwrit, for Todd Pletcher and Jose Ortiz, looking to win the Belmont Stakes like his dad had with other horses such as Tonalist and Creator. So that will do it for the first edition of Turning for Home, the newest Tournament Edge production. So, Bobby, thank you for coming on. As always, it's a pleasure. We will have you back soon for sure. And thank you, everybody, for watching.
Thanks, Andrew. Good luck, everyone.
Good luck, guys.